So John used to tell a story about when he was in Boston with Leon. And he was like the assistant in the class. He was sort of teaching for Leon. And Leon was due to travel to Taiwan, basically to learn some more techniques which he could come back and teach his students to keep them coming. And at the end of the class, he said, I will come and speak to each of you individually. Yeah. And so he went and chatted with every one of his students. And John said what was interesting was that they all came to John and told him what he'd said. And he'd said exactly the same thing to each one of them. You are my best student. So he just realized that basically people just wanted to feel special. And so that's what he gave them. He gave them what they wanted. Yeah. Okay, so here just, if we want our work to have any spiritual effect, and by what I mean by that is if we want it to somehow work to erode the ego, to try and get through the ego, then the work has to deal with the lower spine, just getting rid of that excess curvature in the lumbar spine. So that instead of my spine sitting on top of these two legs, it's extending down all the time. So I want the feeling that I'm touching the ground with my spine. Or if you like, the leg has just become an extension of the spine. Because normally the ground, when we're sitting on top of our legs, when we're walking around, we're on high, we're like lords that's on high, surveying this world, surveying our domain. And the ground is something dirty that's down there, yeah? So we don't touch it, we don't eat anything that's fallen on the ground, yeah? Whereas in Tai Chi, we're just wanting to get down to the ground all the time. So I have to have a sense that my spine is coming through my leg, or that my leg is just an extension of the spine. So the leg is very much like the arm, and the foot is very much like the hand. So just think how easy it is to put your mind in your hand. When you pick up a pencil and do anything, your mind is just naturally there. Whereas with the feet, it's quite different, yeah? The foot is pushing me away from this thing I'd rather not deal with in my mind. So now we just want to get really intimate with the dirt. And we'd like the feet just to be as delicate and as sensitive and capable as the hands. And then just watching your own mind. So you just want to be able to see that as soon as you stick your bum out, which is effectively, that's what we're working at. We're working at keeping the bum in, but not just by pulling like this, by actually extending the spine. So we want to just see that when the bum goes out, it goes out in order to start thinking to yourself. Yeah. So if you're connecting the spine to the ground, you won't be thinking. It's a completely different mind. So in order to think to yourself, basically you have to cut off from the world. Yeah? And so you need to feel safe and you need to feel aloof. Yeah? And so here we're trying to just get into the ground and just have a sense of danger. You know, like the world requires spirit. It requires me to be really alert and awake and vigilant. And just a sense that you're rearing up from the ground. You're not rearing up from the top of the legs. And again, just feel these thick muscles here. Yeah, so we're so used to using those muscles to bring the spirit up. You know, we're quite capable of that. The difficult thing is using those muscles to reach down the legs and onto the ground. So for that, you just need to soften the mind and just find that mind that is just alert and not thinking to itself. It hasn't pushed the world away. As soon as you think to yourself, you're rejecting the world. And it's violent and it's offensive, yeah? Especially when you're working one-to-one with someone. You know, when I'm working, especially with that woman yesterday, she's just thinking to herself all the time. It's just so offensive. So it just requires us to really sink. Yeah, I should really feel that, almost like I want to sit on that spot. I really want the sacrum to just get down there and start nuzzling the ground. So to start with, you know, we just have to make the whole body like this C shape, like this cave, this shape like this, yeah. And then once we've established that, then we can start bringing the spirit up. But this is yielding mind, really. Yielding mind is just the mind that is in the ground, is of the ground. So when you yield to someone, you take them down into the ground. And it's interesting that the word humble, humility, just comes from the word humus. So that, you know, that the rotting vegetable matter that makes the ground fertile, so soil basically. So it is just really just getting down. And you just have to, you know, through practice, you know, basically, you know, if you're struggling with something that seems impossible, then the Tao will help you, basically. You know, you'll have insights, gifts from the Tao, which will help you inch forwards. And so your imagination will just conceive of the situation in a different way, which will enable you to get a little bit of a handle on it. And then at some later date, you'll realize that image wasn't right, or it's no longer appropriate, and then you'll have to drop it. And then again, there's like a fallow period where it's things, oh shit, you know, I'm not progressing. But then if you persist, then another image will come about which will re-inspire you. So that's the way of practice. So it won't happen without the daily persistence. You know, the dailiness, it really is the most important thing. And in that Tommy Angelo book, the one that's called Dailiness, yeah, he just says basically the only way you will practice daily is if you do it first thing when you get up, before anyone else has got up. If you wait until the end of the day, you'll just find numerous excuses to put it off until tomorrow. And he says, if you've set your mind on half an hour of practice, then set the alarm clock an hour earlier, because most of that hour you'll actually waste. You'll put off the fateful time of actually starting the practice. It's just natural. The more resistance you find yourself putting up to practice, the more important it is to do it, in a sense that the more good it will do you. So the more, in a sense, the more talent you have. Yeah. So I've just got to get this down. Okay, so let's just bring it to riding horse. And again, with that sense of the Min Meng sort of pushing back. So you've almost completely ironed out the lordosis in the lower back, the lumbar curve. In order to get this real sense of connecting to the ground directly, rather than through the legs. Because the legs, you know, we've just learned, to develop an ego is quite an achievement because it's completely unnatural. And so the child, when it sees all these egocentric adults, especially nowadays, yeah, you see children being pushed by an adult who is on their phone, looking at a screen and just not attending to the child at all. Yeah, I mean, these children are going to grow up so fucked. Yeah, they're going to have such strong egos. They'll just aspire very early to have that magical instrument themselves. Yeah. So the child has to work really hard, yeah, in order to develop this concentration of self up here. And so for me, ego is just a technological achievement. Yeah, it's something that we've constructed that's completely unnatural. Yeah? And basically, like in the Lord's Prayer, but deliver me from evil. Basically, evil is the ego. So my old lady, how can I believe in God when he killed my parents in the Holocaust? Yeah. I said, it wasn't God that killed your parents, it was the Germans. Yeah. So all evil comes from man, and it's from man's ego. And so the most pressing task we can engage with is the task just to sort of shake it up a little bit so that it will release its hold, at least for some time, at least while we're practicing. And it's difficult because in order to compete in the human universe, you have to have an ego. Now, it's like, in track and field now and bodybuilding, they all take steroids. So there's no way you could possibly compete if you didn't, because they make so much difference. Yeah. And so if you're competing in a world of egos, you need an ego. Yeah. And so the only way really, as far as I can tell, is just to leave that behind. Just wrench yourself out of the human universe, of society, of the social, no friends for me. There's just nothing wasting my time. And it's not as though you make a conscious decision, it's just, you just find all that falling away. Yeah, so you just have to sort of just feel that the spine is open-ended. So it's open here, so we have a sense of that. So we're used to projecting ourselves and promoting ourselves. So there's this sense here. Yeah, most people lack confidence, and so there's a bit like a lid here. So we need to take that off so the heart can come out. But the most important thing is to just take the lid off the bottom so that the spine can just branch down into the ground. And in the Eastern arts, the tried and tested way to leave this behind is to concentrate on the breathing. So you leave the thinking mind and you become the breathing body. So basically what that is doing is just slowing things down, because this will be going, yeah, 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 yeah. And the breathing is just long. So let's just try just a little bit. You just enter a different rhythm zone. There's a different time zone, really. And it's much more of nature. So just feeling the spine just unraveling and then re-raveling. And just try and breathe through the small holes. So sort of make it difficult for the air to come in and out. It's difficult to emphasize just how important that is, because it just forces your mind to stay with the breath. If you want to make sure your mind is on something, just make it difficult. So you just want to feel like the activity is centered around your dantian. So just really loosen the hips. Okay, so let's just bring it back to riding horse. So sinking the shoulders, largely by imagining the elbows heavy. Loosen the hips. And just feel how when you loosen something, basically it lets go. So it's like there's an expanding wave of energy that goes out. Now, obviously that can't go on forever because my body's limited. So what happens, it just naturally returns. And that really is mind in dantian. So mind in dantian is like the return of the relaxation. The energy goes out like this, and then because it's got to stay in my body, it will just return and gather here. And that is concentrating the spirit. So we just want to see how, one is because of the other. They depend upon each other. And just always just feeling this, the spine trying to go through the legs. So for that, the easiest way to handle that really is just to visualize a tail, like a tail that's just extending down. And that, getting the legs as part of the body rather than something you're sitting on, that's a real 10-year minimum project. And then just feeling the feet like really big, and they're just doing this all the time. The toes are sort of a little bit restless. The foot is twisting on the ground. Almost like you're just giving that spot where your foot is a little bit of a massage. But it's a natural thing. It's not as though you're trying too hard to do it. And just this feeling that the ground is a little bit alive. It's pumping with a rhythm that's just slower than the breathing. Yeah. And if you go with that, it will actually get you moving side to side. So ideally, what we would like when we move side to side is that it's happening because of our relationship with the ground, our energetic relationship, rather than because I mechanically decided to do an exercise. So I'm being moved here, and then a wave will come up and send me back. Yeah. Yeah, so it's this energy that's rising. And just feeling the weight almost like a flow. My weight flows down this leg. It's not something that I push over the leg like this, because that will force the leg to then be a barrier between you and the ground. So here this leg sucks my weight down into it. Yeah. And the form is just a great place to practice this, because when you finish a posture, it's very easy to tell whether you've got the S-shaped spine sitting on top of these legs or whether you've actually gone into the ground through the leg. But it's difficult because it's just a completely new way of doing things. So it needs you to develop a new mind, which means giving up the old mind. And that's just difficult. You just need to tell yourself it's going to take a while. And I may never get there. And it's just not something you can think about, because the new posture that we're after, that we're trying to cultivate, doesn't think. As soon as you start thinking, then you've slipped into the old posture. So in a sense, you know, there's real feedback from the system. It's quite easy to tell. Then it's just that there may be quite a delay before you correct yourself. But none of this way of working would have been possible. I wouldn't have understood what needs to happen without being on this diet and losing 12 kilos. Because basically when you're even a little bit overweight, this area just sort of sets and just stiffens. And we just want to really make this really fluid. From being the part of the spine that is least flexible, we'd like it to be the most flexible. So what is it in my mind that needs to soften and let go to allow that to happen? Okay, so let's just, again, this sense that the bottom of my spine is just going down into the legs. So that's where I start. I don't start here. I've slipped through. And then when I come up and project, I'm not projecting an ego. I'm not projecting a special private image. I'm just projecting something from the ground. Same as a plant, yeah. Yeah, so a tree or a flower, yeah. They're just bringing energy up and out of the ground, and it presents itself differently because it's colored by the beingness of that entity, yeah. So the energy that comes out of me will be different than the energy that comes out of someone else because it's colored by me, but it's not colored by an ego. It's not a construct. It's just something that's just come up through me and it comes out. So I'm not trying to make an image. I don't have a self-image that's projecting itself. I just have energy. And you just don't care, yeah? You don't care what the world thinks of you. You don't think much of the world, so why should it think anything of you? Okay, so the other exercise that's really useful for getting into the lower back is just squatting down and just feeling the min meng area just stretching and spreading. So breathing through the small hole when you're doing the breathing exercises, when you're meditating, and this are just really important. So here it's as though you don't have any legs. So it's as though, so here the spine is actually on the ground. So John used to call it penguin Tai Chi. So because penguins don't really have legs, they just have feet and a body sort of resting on these 2 feet. So this sense that your spine is just on the feet. There's no stiff or depressed leg getting in the way. And just really feeling the ground, like your 2 feet are like big hands, or even better still, like 2 ears. You're listening to the ground with your feet. And it's the last thing that we normally do. We're normally using the feet and the legs to create a barrier between us and the ground, so we don't have to give it any heed. So here I'm just really feeling the ground and just soaking up all the vibrations. And then just placing the hands on the ground and just feeling the ground just earthing you. It's sucking energy out of your upper body. And just feel it as the longer you stay down here, the more difficult it gets. And so that will intensify you. Yeah, so you'll start to feel the ground as being a little bit unstable, like the 2 hands are just moving a little bit relative to each other. So the body's just, the deep rhythms of the body are just waking up, stimulated by the rhythms in the ground. So the ground is talking to us, it's trying to talk to us all the time, and we're ignoring it. I once saw a performance piece, performance art. The artist spilt a quart of milk on the floor and then just got down on their hands and knees and licked it all up. So just imagine how much of the ground you would become if you just got down and started licking it. All the dust and the hairs and the grit, and in just ingesting it all. It becomes part of you, literally. So it's basically, it's intimacy, really. We're becoming intimate with the ground. And that's what, when you think to yourself, basically you're refusing intimacy. You're having to push the world away in order to abuse yourself. And you just got to look at it, you know, this is what meditation is for. You just, so when I start thinking, what's actually happened? What have I done? And there's always been, we don't realize we're doing it. This is why, you know, it becomes like just a habit. Something in me just tells myself that I am more important than what I'm engaged with. Yeah. So that's what we just have to try and get away from. So this, as John always used to say, you know, you just got to be so interested in what's going on around you in your environment that there's no chance of you thinking to yourself. The same way, if, you know, if you're watching an exciting movie, you wouldn't be thinking to yourself in your head. You'd just be totally engaged. So it's the same sort of engagement that we want. And you just got to sort of just notice things. You know, so the slightest things. Okay, and now let's just come up. Okay, and now let's just get these muscles going a little bit. So just perhaps the easiest way really is just to lean against a wall and then just pace as though you're trying to push yourself through the wall, but gently, and just feeling this leg as just being part of the spine, especially part of this muscle. And so there's a slight turning going on all the time. So just be aware of the points of contact. Just notice how it's much easier to get your mind into the hands than it is into the feet. So what we'd like is the same feeling for the feet as we have for the hands. So the feet are not remote, they're not down there. My mind can get into them. They'll get it, they'll feel different, but I just want them just to be just as active. And then just back to riding horse. So again, just yeah, so it's quite we have to make a real effort to pull the mind up here. You know? So it's when you relax the mind, it will just drop. And then you just realize what an effort it is to actually pull it all up into here. And then the only way that happens is if you tell yourself that you're more important than what you're doing even. So just loosening the hips, that brings about a concentrated Dantian spirit. And this sense that you're just as much in the feet as you are in the hands. And the head is just empty, pretty vacant, yeah? It's just, there's a clear channel from the ground through you out of your eyes. So you're eager, you're willing, and you're raring to go. Like a child, yeah? Nothing special. So with babies and little children, just how important the eyes are. I was on the train yesterday and came to get off the train. We've got a double-decker train, so I had to walk down the stairs. And there was a religious woman with a pushchair, a perambulator, one of the old-fashioned ones. And there was a baby in it. And the baby just caught my eye, and I just looked into its eyes and just smiled, and this baby's face just broke into this big, wide smile. And I just thought, wow, what a gift, yeah. And then I just looked around to see if anyone else was catching it as well. And everyone was on their phone, including the mother. Everyone was oblivious to the magic around them, yeah. In their own self-designed worlds, designed to protect the ego and protect them from spirit, protect them from the unknown. Life on my terms, fuck you. So I'm just melting. And it's this area that's melting. Melding the upper and the lower body. Okay, now let's just try drawing the leg up. So to try and just stretch the lower back a little bit, yeah? So just trying to pull it under into the leg. So I'm drawing my lower back by pulling up my leg. And then just feel the same from this side, just releasing into the leg. And again, just feel this, it's like a snake. The leg is like a snake. It's gone down, it's taken the ground, and then that enables this. So the leg is alive. It's not a vehicle. It's not like a motorbike or a bicycle or a car, which most of us tend to sort of conceive of them as. It's very alive and it's very organic. And it's full of feeling. And it's really intimately connected to this part, the lower back. So here we're just using that to just stretch it out. Because it's this really sort of almost like a huddle, this sort of hunched up feeling. That's the feeling of when your lower back is actually in the ground. So we're well capable of it, so we can do it just by pulling the knee up. It's just difficult to get it like that all the time. And especially when you're doing the form. So I let my lower back expand into the extension. And just feel what it does to the mind. It really intensifies. And it just unifies the whole body. So you're just one thing. Very much centered in a Dan Chen. And you can do this lying down. You can just pull the knee up. Yo. Yeah, so just develop delicate legs. So don't clump with the legs. Don't bang them on the ground in this ignorant way. They're really delicate. They're delicate probes. You're probing reality with them. Wait. And just stay cheerful. You. Yeah, so we just want that experience of, when it intensifies to a degree that you sort of just burst into this really spirited energy realm. And then you realize that these visualizations are not just pictures, they're real. Wait. Okay, so let's just bring it back. And now just feel it. That should just almost shrink you, like you've just become more compact. It's because the spine has just taken more of just a round shape. So we just want to feel that sense of sort of crouching, almost cowering into the body, into the sunk body. And just realize that when you touch something real, there's a price to pay. By real, We don't mean what's out there. So real, used in this sense, was a term of Jacques Lacan. And really, it was like his word for the unconscious, his word for those sort of subterranean animal drives, yeah, that would actually shape our lives if we allowed them to. The things that society tells us we have to get them under control and sublimate them into polite behavior, which is like, in other words, repress, yeah, and that's what we're just trying to get away from. So we just want those moments when the real, we catch a glimpse of the real, yeah, and then you've just really just got to let it go, because if you try and hold on to that too much, the ego will fight back 10 to the dozen. So it's a really slow process, yeah. This is why it's best to start young. So just trying to wake up those just deep energies, yeah. Just these, like, almost like imagine you could really just feel your digestion, yeah. You could feel the stomach doing its churning, you could feel the food traveling through your small intestine and then being converted into shit, yeah. And so just, it's like an intimacy with the metabolism, if you like, the metabolic process of anything that's energetic in the body. Okay, now let's draw it up into attention posture, but again, just this sense that I contract, I become more concentrated rather than just relaxing and slackening off. And just be careful not to let the bum go back. So still with slightly bent legs so that the spine can branch down the legs. Yeah, so that you want to feel that's what we mean by sinking. By sinking, we don't mean bending the knees or even sinking the energy. What we mean is letting the spine branch and travel down our legs. So becoming snake. And when you lose your concentration, which we inevitably do, 10 times a minute, you just bring it back. But also just be aware that every time you lose concentration, It's not just concentration you lose connection. You're no longer as deep in. Okay, so let's finish.